about the evolution of aging services in the United States, I mean, you have to go back to 1965, which was a year where Medicare was passed, Medicaid was passed. But before those two programs were passed, the Older Americans Act was passed. And those programs came out of the war on poverty. In 1965, 30% of older adults lived in poverty.
It was only in the late 50s that the first studies of aging began. It was with the Baltimore Longitudinal Project in 1958. I think Pima Council on Aging started maybe less than 10 years after that. So they were right at the beginning. And of course, at that point we knew nothing about aging really.
The council was really created before area agencies on aging were created. They were one of the pilot sites for the creation of the Aging Network as it stands now.
Activist Marian Lupu has always believed that this public health issue demands public action. Almost 50 years ago, she founded the organization that would become the Pima Council on Aging.
When I started, our only service was one nursing home in the community. Most of the social agencies did not serve the elderly.
My first intersection was through Marian Lupu. I was on the Board of Supervisors, and when we were considering our budget, she would come each year and ask for funds to be allocated in our budget for PCOA. She was very persuasive. It was just a very small group of people, and we worked out of the library, as I recall. I was on the Federal Council on Aging, meeting with congressmen. One of the things we worked very hard for was to keep the Older Americans Act alive and have Congress enact it every year. It was a constant fight.
Members of the Board of Supervisors or the City Council or the state legislature hated to hear Marian was coming to a meeting because she never traveled alone. There were a cadre of older adults who really gained the passion that she had, and she would turn out to meeting after meeting. Innovative sort of things started to happen in looking at ways to be more dignified and more humane in approaching issues of the elderly, recognizing caregiver issues. Pima Council on Aging had been a leader in some of those kinds of efforts. Pima Council on Aging was designated locally for Pima County as the area agency on aging. Really built the stature of that organization and made it more visible to the community.
One of the really important findings and somewhat surprising findings over the last 5 years has been the importance of social interaction for maintaining cognitive health and brain health as we get older. One of the great things that PCOA is doing now and has done for many years is to break through that isolation, to help people to connect and stay connected. What we're learning from research is how important that is in maintaining brain health.
The Older Americans Act is still really the cornerstone for most of the programs that PCOA provides. So the funding coming from the federal government through the Older Americans Act is the foundation. I think at the federal level, they started looking at how people could take responsibility themselves for some of their health care, ways that people could address their chronic diseases or prevent those chronic diseases from happening in the first place. We also started looking at not only how we could support people in their home, but doing more preventative kinds of services. Evidence-based health promotion, disease prevention programs. And it's also trying to balance ongoing programs, keeping that safety net of services there, while at the same time looking at what change needs to happen. One of the things I've learned and really learned from Marian was that PCOA could not do it by itself. And so we needed to draw in partners.
It would be difficult to talk about the relationship between Catholic Community Services and PCOA without mentioning two great leaders who got together many, many years ago, probably the 50 years ago, and that would be obviously Marian Lupu and Jack Cotter. There are two ways we provide nutritious meals to older adults in Pima County. And one way is through what's called congregate meals. And basically that means a group of folks having a very great lunch together. The folks who aren't able to attend or participate in group meal programs, congregate meals, are folks who need a nutritious meal provided to their home on a regular basis. And what's important about the model that we collaboratively work on with Pima Council on Aging is the fact that our drivers not only provide food to the individual, but attempt to form a relationship and a safety check, if you will. And one woman had experienced a fall, and she had been laying on the floor for almost a full day. And the next day, when our driver came to the door, knocked on the door, and called out to the individual, there was no answer. He immediately knew something was wrong, and he called the first responders. He knocked on the door was open, so he was able to enter, and the woman, when he roused her, looked up and said, "I wasn't worried. I knew you would come. I knew you would help me."
The services that PCOA offered to the elderly were essential for them to live a life they would like to live and to educate the people in our community about the needs of the elderly. And I think that would not have happened if it had not been for PCOA.
When I think of the Pima Council on Aging, I think of innovation. I think of an excellent agency that's really serving the older adults and caregivers in this community and doing it in an excellent way. I think if we want to change the world of aging, the one thing that everybody in this community and everybody in every community needs to do is to advocate. Advocate for aging. Because these changes aren't going to happen on their own. If you really want to create a society that values and supports people as they age, you need to have your voice heard.